team.
Hey there guys, this is Malorian and this is the Orc Tactical Team, and what we're going to be talking about today is a question that came from a couple of viewers. It came from the Gong, which I assume is some sort of like alien gelatin creature, and then also from Whoopi. And really together what they're asking about is, hey Malorian, what's the deal with ballistic skill based shooting? Is it good? Is it worth taking now? What's the deal? Now, to kind of really first define what they're talking about, at first you might think, well, shooting, of course, that's all based off ballistic skill. What are you talking about? Yeah, shooting is shooting. Well, it's really the difference between something that's actually going to use your ballistic skill, so that's talking about like arrows or bolt throwers or the hell blasters, as opposed to something that won't, more like the cannon or a stone thrower or a mortar or something like that, right? So really what this comes from is there's really, especially if you just go back just a few months already, everyone's saying just don't take ballistic skill based shooting. And this really starts from the beginning of 8th, where it was just hordes, right? Hordes everywhere. And because of that, it's like, well, don't bother shooting some arrows, put everything into combat. Don't bother with taking the long gunners or with the crossbow men with, say, like Empire, take halberdiers. Because, man, it just doesn't matter if you kill a couple of those huge hordes of orcs or night goblins. You got to be ready to fight those guys in combat. Meanwhile, though, it's like, well, your stuff is still good, like your cannons and your stone throwers and stuff like that. That stuff will come in. It's a big, huge pie plate. It's taking lots of these hordes away. And, of course, cannons are always a very key tool to have. So that was back kind of then. Then even more so, kind of like, well, might be able to do a few little pinging damage. It might be okay. But then you go on to the next stage. And we had things like the Mournfang. We had the Demigriffs and stuff like that. The Skull Crushers and stuff like that. And really, with this 1+ armor save and high toughness, it was useless because you go and you shoot, 30 arrows and do nothing because you're needing to hit on like a 4+ or a 5+, depending where they're at. Then you're wounding on a 5+. They have a 2+ save, even if you're running strength 4, say like your crossbow, doesn't matter. They still have a 2+ save because they're based off of 1+. And it's like, well, why did you even bother, right? This is just planking off. You're wasting your time. Get ready for combat and then take cannons and stuff for the worst of it. But I think now things have really changed, and I've already started changing my list to deal with that. And that's really the oncoming of the elves, and even now with the dwarves, that ballistic skill-based shooting is a lot more worthwhile. Now, the big thing here is all of a sudden we have elves, right? They're toughness 3, they're normally having pretty bad armor, and so all of a sudden shooting can do a lot of damage to these guys. There are a lot of points. We're not talking 3-point night goblins here. We're talking elite elves, which are in the teens for the points and all the rest of it. And so all of a sudden, like standing back and shooting off these guys before they get you, that can do fantastic work and do very well for you. Meanwhile, as well, we're having these little fast cap things running around, especially with the warlocks. Those warlocks are so dangerous, and you really can't get the same work out of your stuff that doesn't have ballistic skill-based shooting. You could be going like, say, like a magic missile, but at the same time, you have other spells you want to be casting that you don't want to have to dedicate to that magic missile. You could shoot a hell blaster at them, but do you really want to shoot a hell blaster at that cav or at the knights, right? You want to shoot that at the knights. So it's really the way that you're going to try and base these things. And really over that, then it's like, well, maybe I should start taking some shooting again because I can really go and shoot those guys down. Now, am I saying you have to go and completely change your list and take lots and lots of crossbows and bows and all the rest you can? No, of course not. There's still always going to be a balance, but you can start looking at your list and seeing ways you can incorporate it in without making a huge impact on the overall strategy of the list. For example, if you spend some points on throwaway units, right? There's just supposed to be something in the front that you're throwing away. Maybe you should take this little tiny unit of 10 missile troops. They're not really that expensive. Say if you were to take 10 archers or 10 crossbowmen or whatever it is, and just say like, well, there you go. I'm going to take these 10. They're cheap enough that I can always use them to push ahead and redirect and whatever else I need to do with them to not tarp it, but to kind of just be a speed bump. And hey, if I'm ever up against elves or these fast cav or the warlock type things, well, I'll just put them over to the side and they can do their shooting job just fine. As well, it's always good as well to have units like these, because whenever you face something that's a monster, say like the Demon Prince or some nasty thing running around with a Charm Shield, well, you just shoot those guys first, take off the Charm Shield, and then bam, smash them with the cannon after. So they can be very useful. Other places where you can mix that stuff in is, say, for your bunker, right? A lot of times you're taking a cheap little unit that you have in the back for your characters to go to. Well, normally there's some other options you can take for just a little bit more points, and they'll have missile weapons. And I mean, first of all, it might be a nice thing to have because if something's sneaking around to your bunker, they can always kind of turn the face and shoot down the threat. They can stand and shoot when it comes into you, and so it's not that bad of a thing to have. Then all of a sudden, again, if I'm ever facing the high elves, the dark elves, maybe wood elves, or even dwarves, even dwarves too. They're toughness 4, which is a little bit tougher, but these guys have very little armor. I mean, sure, you might see iron breakers or something like that. You don't want to be shooting arrows at those guys, but those great weapon guys, they have a 5+ armor. Shoot them. Shoot the hell out of them because, these expensive hammerers or whatever they are, they'll go down to these bows, and it will make a significant difference when combat comes around. But like I was saying, if you take that bunker and you realize I'm up against one of these armies here where it's going to make a bigger impact, instead of having back as a bunker, put them in the front or set them up on a flank and just line them up and say, pew, 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 I'm just going to go and shoot you down. And meanwhile, your characters, depending on the threat, can either just be behind the units, mix in to escape after. And of course, I mean, looking at the elves, for the most part, they don't have really crazy good shooting, right? They don't have the cannons and stuff like that. So you can normally hide a character, say, behind the unit. And if you're within 3 inches, you're still getting a 4+ lookout, sir. Now, be careful if you're up against warlocks. They can hit you with magic missiles, and that might be a danger. And so if that's really what you're worried about, you can always start the characters inside the front blocks, and then what you can do then is that when they get close and combat's a threat, then you step back. And hopefully by that time, you shot down the warlocks, or, combat is going to be imminent, so they're not going to be throwing a lot of magic into magic missiles. They got to try and support this combat now, so your character should be safe. Another way you can always incorporate that stuff too is just always almost like layering it, whatever. You're going to take, instead of that bunker and put on the side there, you could put it in the front. And the crazy thing is you could even put your characters still in the bunker, even though it's in the very front. And this seems like very stupid, but I've done this a few times and it doesn't work out too bad. Really, when you'd want to do this is when you have a slow opponent that's not going to be coming at you super fast, and especially if you have other redirectors that'll be up there. Then what you do is you have your combat line that's going to be lined up like normal, and instead of your bunker being in the back in, ranked formation, they're going to be wide in front of the army. And really what happens is that you're just going to be there, shooting, pew, 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 pew. You're going to be redirecting them to make sure that you're slowing them down. And then whenever they're at a spot where they can really seriously charge you, you wait for that charge and you flee. You hop over your back lines, your bunker is now behind you, and the next turn, I mean, it's your general and your BSB, they should rally, and then, hey, my bunker is behind my lines where it's supposed to be, and meanwhile, I got all that work out of my shooting troops. There's a little bit of risk there, saying that they'll be causing panic tests, and during that turn, until they rally, you won't be having any benefit from them, but it's another option and something you can look into, and something, too, where sometimes your opponents just don't really expect it to happen, right? They're like, oh, look at this idiot, I'm going to charge them. It ran away, and all of a sudden they can be a little bit thrown off their guard. So something you can use to your advantage, but really, when you look at this, is Blitzskill shooting worth taking? Absolutely. Now, of course, the last caveat that I got to throw into this is look at your own meta. I mean, I'm talking in general terms, back in the old days of all hordes, and then you had your monsters cav, and now you have the high elves. This is now talking like a global meta. But you have to really look at what's showing up your store, right? If your store is really big on warriors of chaos, and all they take is, the chariots and the skull crushers and the demon prince and stuff like that. Don't bother with this type of blitz skill shooting because it's not going to do much. However, if you're in a meta where there's lots and lots and lots of high elves and dark elves, well, take more than normal, right? I mean, I knew in a tournament going back that there's going to be a lot of high elves and dark elves, so I took a lot of shooting in my list. I took 2 units of 30 orcs with bows, and hey, they'll do their job. Pew, 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 pew. I took my 100 night goblins with short bows because I knew in that meta they'd do even better. So you have to kind of play that game, look around, and if nothing else, just try and find that balance because really, like I said, if you go and take a throwaway unit and turn it into a unit of crossbows instead, you're usually investing just a little bit more points, and then you're a little bit more versatile, have that extra tool in your tool belt. So there you have it. Hope you have something to take away from that, and we'll catch you later. Bye.